Welcome to the Grappling Grappling Rewind Podcast.
Welcome to this week on the Grappling Rewind Podcast. In this week's show, we are going to recap Midwest finishers, the men's 185-pound tournament and the women's 145-pound tournament. Talk a little about Enigma grappling and also preview Polaris 24 with some fantastic matches on it. As always, in the show, I'm your host, Maine, my co-host,
Zach.
How you doing, Zach?
Pretty good today.
Doing pretty good. So we have a new podcast set up.
Yeah.
We've moved it around. If you watch the video show, you'll see immediately how we've changed the configuration. If there's some minor, hiccups or changes, that's because we're trying to figure out the new setup. And you shouldn't, but if you do, that's why. Let's get into news before we get into anything.
News?
Yeah. Do we have any news?
I don't think I did not come in prepared with any news. I haven't seen anything this
week.
week.
The only thing we have is we have Enigma grappling. We didn't actually get a chance to cover it, but I did piece through some of the finals matches. We had Oliver Taza taking on Andy Varela. Oliver Taza was the existing Enigma champion. He beat Andy Varela in a 40-minute ADCC rules match. I don't know exactly how he beat him. I think it might have been a negative or points, but we'll watch that and we'll get back to that, so that should be fun. We also had Luke Griffith taking a victory over Pat Shangoli on that card as well. That was down in Austin, Texas. I think it puts on some really fun events. It was a pay-per-view, so we didn't. I kind of dropped the ball on that one, Zach. So
yeah, we weren't up to date on that, and then missed.
It's a holiday weekend here in the U.S., and so we did what we could, and I dropped the ball on that. But other than that, it's been a pretty quiet week, overall, which is not terrible. But we do have Polaris coming up. So
Polaris should be good.
It should be a lot of fun.
Midwest finishers was really good too. I
enjoyed it.
We have some interesting matches to cover.
We did
today, despite missing Enigma.
Yeah, by missing Enigma.
Some bigger names on Enigma we would usually have covered, but
but it's cool to see.
Happens.
It is cool to see Taza retain that belt. So, want to move into the recap?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it. So, we want to start with the women of the men's, Zach.
Let's start with women's.
Okay, so let's run through just the semifinals onward for the women's matches. The women's matches were fun in the semifinal. We're going to start with Trinity or Peyton?
Let's start with Trinity.
Okay, so the Trinity match, we had Trinity Pun versus Felicia. Oh, I got to do the names here because it's you. Felicia Marinu, I think is how you pronounce her name.
Marinu. Yeah, and also this is something that we decided to mention, that Maine has the clickiest keyboard imaginable today.
Yeah.
And so you might hear some click clacks in the background.
Yeah, I'm going to fix that for next week, but it was we redid the entire podcast setup, and I had the clicky keyboard upstairs on this other computer that is behind the camera. And so sorry, I'll get it next week.
Yeah.
I will fix it so it's not the clickiest keyboard imaginable. This was a fun match. Trinity wins this one via a really kind of neat kneebar. One that you don't see. We see people throw a lot.
You don't see it finished a lot, and the thing is, it's a little bit more of a catch than traditional, what we would think of as a clean jiu-jitsu setup. Like, there's not a lot of pressure. It's really taking advantage of an opportunity that Trinity found. Felicia essentially is in reverse De La Hiva and starts to try to invert underneath, and is a little bit loose about the invert, specifically her free leg.
Yeah, she kind of pushes the top leg away. She's basically going for the inversion to push Trinity away to kind of retain guard or go underneath to a leg. Like, we see it used for both purposes.
We see this done really tight, especially in women's divisions. We see a couple women that are really good on these knee bars that are good at this inversion from this very specific spot. It's just you have to keep your outside leg in much tighter than I think Felicia was focused on in this particular instance.
Yeah, I think Elizabeth Clay does a variation of this really frequently.
Exactly.
Well, she'll push away and she'll basically go either behind the shoulder or push someone away into a knee bar. Felicia, I think she's trying to retain guard because the match kind of up to this point had been her retaining guard and doing some other things, but she seemed to be wanting to play from that guard position. She inverts under, and Trinity goes and starts cutting her knee across kind of the face and far side. And because Felicia's knee and leg comes up to push Trinity away, Trinity jumps essentially over the body completely and takes the far side leg and does a jumping knee bar on the cross side leg and is able to get the finish and basically lands right on the chest.
And the thing is, we see this happen a lot, but the person on the bottom, if you're playing a little bit tight when that jump happens, so Trinity essentially does like a 180 step and goes from facing face to face with Felicia to facing the same direction as her. So it turns around completely to attack that far leg. And a lot of times during that step, there's enough time for the person on the bottom to sort of retract their leg. And so we see this attempted a lot.
Even if not the leg, it's like you just get it's really hard for the top person jumping for the knee bar to get their basically hips below the knee
Right.
and then land. And so as the scramble sort of happens, your knee most of the time sort of just ends up popping out of the knee line. You end up in like a 50-50 or a double seated open guard.
Yep.
But Trinity's able to jump across and keep the knee low enough on the stomach, like right near the belly button, to fall directly back. And she gets a good enough grip on the leg to fall with the leg and not like bounce out of the leg. And it's not something we really commonly see. And I love wild finishes like this. This is something that I throw at the gym sometimes on certain guys, but it's so hard to see it finished because you have to cover such a large distance, and especially at the top levels, we see people are able to free their knee. So it was really cool to have Trinity be able to secure a super deep knee bar, and even it's not even like a panic tap or a flash tap. It's you see we freeze framed it here because we have finally a TV in front of us. You can see that Trinity has a super deep bite below the knee, and there's just no chance that Felicia is going to be able to get that knee out. So
yeah, it was a really clean finish from Trinity. A nice execution on something that we don't see finished very often.
Yeah, that's in a semifinals match for women's 145.
Yep.
So it is interesting. I don't think Trinity usually is at 145. I always kind of muck up Trinity's weight and division.
She bounces around a lot.
She does, but a lot of women bounce around. I'm just not used to her up at 145. I know, again, we're going to see her in the finals match versus Peyton Letcher. We saw them going against each other at Rise 11 only a couple of months ago. So it is cool to have them both in the finals. Peyton looked really good in this tournament as well. So in her semifinals match, she goes up against, let me get her name, Mila.
Maya?
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 Yeah. Mila. And they had a good back and forth match, and in the finishing of that match, you see Peyton kind of pretty aggressively, and we know Peyton to go for the legs at a pretty quick frequency. It's something we see from her a lot. So she's pummeling the legs. She's going where she has the leg on the outside, and she's reaping over on the inside. So not technically a reap because it's not cross body, but it is inside of the leg line.
Yeah. Yep, she's secured in nice. The foot is tucked under, so she has her leg wrapped over, sort of reaped, but then tucked. The foot tucked in underneath Mila's other butt cheek. Essentially, this is a really secure position, and she's laying on the leg that she's attacking. From this position, she's able. Oh, we changed. From that position, she's able to sort of sit herself back a little bit more, and then starts attacking the far leg, which is a really interesting. She's got the inside leg, the leg that she's entangled, locked into place, and then she's able to attack the free leg. And once you have both legs locked in, it's
she finishes a straight ankle lock here, which is not a common. Again, we usually see many more heel hook finishes, but the way that she finishes the straight ankle, it's interesting because she's essentially over the other leg, so you eliminate all of the pummeling that can happen with the free leg. It's just a belly down, not even a belly down, kind of a to the side straight ankle lock finish, but because you have that other leg that the person would usually go to push off or defend with, because you've lifted and reaped over it initially, that leg is just completely out of the picture. Can't be pummeled in, can't be defended, and so when Peyton goes to finish that straight ankle lock, she's sort of pushed down and away.
Yeah, it's a really nice finishing position. There's really no escaping for Mila. Once that second leg, once the free leg, the leg that's not in the entanglement, is collected by Peyton, it seems like it's a matter of time. It's going to be really, really hard for Mila to do anything to get out of this position once that leg is secured by Peyton, and the finish is nice.
What I love, too, is we're starting to see a lot more, variation in, we're seeing straight ankle lock finishes and heel hook finishes. I think for a couple of years, we rarely ever saw straight ankle lock finishes. I think we're starting to see them kind of return as a control point.
Well, it's, that's the thing. I think heel hooks are a quicker finish and straight ankle locks are a more secure position. And so it depends on style. And, there's a period of time when heel hooks got really popular because they weren't allowed, and then I think there was this sort of thing that happens in jiu-jitsu a lot where because it's not a super well-known technique, it's extremely effective. And now people are more accustomed to being put in heel hooks. We know how to defend them. We know where we're going to start getting into some trouble. And so, some people knew before, but the general community knows a little bit better when they're in trouble and when they need to tap and when they're able to escape and how they're able to escape. And now that that's happening, some of those more controlling points that we always knew how to defend, straight ankles, are getting a little bit more popular, I think, because of that, right? We can use them as control.
Yeah.
It might not be as quick of a finish, but we're starting to see a resurgence of straight ankle locks, I think, because
But
of
even
that.
even in this particular finish, which is like a mat side belly down ankle lock, it is really interesting because I think we're seeing this particular finish at a greater degree of frequency as well. We're seeing almost like, because Peyton, if she were to belly down, she'd end up in like a tripod footlock, which is like Varela Bobbycom and like other practitioners. We saw that kind of popular in the early 2010s, somewhere around there. And we're starting to see this control come back because you can pop in and out of what would be traditionally kind of heel hooking positions from there, and you can belly down, and then you can sweep off of that straight ankle because you're so far away from the person's hips. When they go to defend the straight ankle, they tend to sit their hips up, and then you can start to use the pass. And, a couple of years ago, we really saw the introduction of people using leg locks as passing opportunities, and I think that's beginning to fold back into the mix where instead of needing to use the heel hook where they're going to roll, now you use the straight ankle lock, it gets them to sit into you, and so we're seeing a much larger expansion, and we see Peyton, is able to finish the straight ankle lock here, but I think this particular finish we're seeing more of, and it is indicative of sort of the shift of meta that, there's a whole host of people are starting to utilize all of the leg locks. Like in this women's finals, semifinals and finals, we have a knee bar, a straight ankle, and a heel hook.
Yeah.
A diversity of leg lock finishes.
And for a while there, we were seeing heel hooks.
It was only heel hooks.
Yeah.
Like it was only heel hooks. That's all. Like every finals match, if it was a finish on the leg, it was a heel hook. And occasionally you'd have Craig Jones like do a knee bar or something like that if heel hooks were banned. But for the most part, it was heel hooks. It is neat to see kind of the expansion in recent years from just the heel hooks to a more diverse variety that are being used for both submissions and positional control.
Yep.
So, neat. Let's talk about the finals match. Again, Trinity and Peyton meeting up. I think Trinity and Peyton met up in the semifinals of Rise because I think Peyton went against Nicole Matthews in the finals there, and she's able to beat Nicole Matthews. But this is a cool. This is a match I'm happy to see over and over again. Both Trinity and Peyton getting to the finals with really no surprise to me.
Yeah, no, I this is the predicted finals that I would have had looking at this bracket from the start. And this is an interesting matchup because stylistically they're very different. We're seeing Peyton is clearly looking for the legs at all times. From a lot of her matches, she's looking to enter into the legs. She'll sacrifice position regularly to attack at the legs, and that makes sense in these rule sets. Trinity's playing a little bit more of a traditional jiu-jitsu, taking more of a traditional jiu-jitsu approach.
We're seeing her do more wrestling too. We're seeing, and Peyton has some wrestling. And Peyton has some really great judo. We saw that in her trials run. She has some really great haragoshis and like big judo throws, but Trinity here, especially in this entire Midwest Finishers run, we were seeing her showcase more of her wrestling, and sort of she was looking to have more aggressive scrambles from the feet to position. And unfortunately, I think for the finals here, that's sort of what gets her into trouble.
I don't think that's what gets her into trouble. So the sequence starts because Trinity takes a really nice shot on a single. Her head ends up on the outside, but she corrects that by turning it into a go behind. And so she gets the signal, her head gets pushed out to the outside, she turns it into a go behind, she climbs up on the back, she gets her hooks in, and this is all really, really beautiful jiu-jitsu. But then as they land, she loses the body lock on the back. And I think she might have been trying to climb up a little bit. But she loses control on the back and starts trying to maybe enter into the legs. And as soon as she lets go of that control, Peyton drops down to start attacking at her legs, right? And so it's this. If Trinity had managed to just hold tight onto the hips there, I think that she might have been able to secure the back a little bit better. But she opted to make a move into a different position, and Trinity took advantage of that immediately. Peyton took advantage of that immediately and drops down into that sort of like grab the knee bar kind of situation and starts attacking there.
I love that transition too off the back because you tend to, as the person that is having your back taken, especially because how kind of Trinity does it, where you have the double hooks behind and you're looking to throw both hooks over into just the standard hooks.
Yeah.
And Peyton does a great job tracking that, if you can get your butt to the side of one of those legs coming in, you are in position to either roll yourself into 50-50 first, or to roll into like a knee bar, or you can do what Peyton does here. And a little later in this transition, you see Peyton use a grip. She grabs over top of the calf and starts to pull the calf up. That is such a strong grip from that position. And the problem with it is, as the person taking the back, you immediately have to go from, okay, I have to either chase the back or I have to defend out into the legs. And it's a really, really hard decision to make because there's merit to like, okay, I need to be the first person to get to the leg positioning.
Right.
Or if the other person commits too hard on the legs and doesn't defend their back, you end up taking the back. And so we see this as really a 50-50 shot for a lot of competitors where they will shoot for the back and either make a decision to go into the legs first or continue to go for the back, and that can work out for them or against them. Plenty of times we see a really strong leg locker go for the legs, and the person goes, I don't really care, I'm going to continue to take your back, and then just end up taking the back and getting a sub because the person's hands are committed super low.
Yep.
But plenty of times we also see what happens in this match where Peyton, as the person defending her back being taken, enters into the legs first, is able to get the stronger position over top. Because Trinity's hips are turned kind of the other way, she is the second to be able to enter into the leg position to both attack and defend, and then Peyton has the initiative here and has the advantage to keep kind of progressing where she's looking to go.
And there's a split second where Trinity almost gets her knee out, and she starts turning nice, and then... Yeah, she starts turning nice, and then they both end up on their outside butt cheek, and Peyton does a really nice job resetting the saddle position, dropping down before attacking the ankle. I think a lot of times people are tempted to just keep attacking the ankle there, and that's how escapes happen. So Trinity's doing the right thing by slowly working her knee through, but there's a split second when she doesn't have the control that she needs to keep Peyton from climbing back up. Peyton climbs back up, and that's essentially when the finish happens. So Peyton climbs back up onto the hip, gets her shin essentially right inside of Trinity's hip. The knee is way up in Peyton's chest, and she's able to finish the inside heel hook from there. It was really nice. It was a really nice setup from Peyton all the way through, but in particular, I was impressed by that last little bit where Trinity was almost out and she reset
that position. I mean, but there's a point where we see Peyton kind of start to adjust for the leg. She goes heel hook. Trinity flattens her chest up, attacks the legs, and then Trinity's able to base all the way out, and Peyton's able to pull the heel back into position while Trinity's trying to push the legs off. And it's, again, it's so rare, not so rare, but it is really, really impressive to have someone, when they're looking to escape, be able to retain the knee line in that position. It's just not something that
I wouldn't even call this retaining it from Peyton. I think she recovered it. I think Trinity was essentially out.
Yeah.
And then Peyton recognized what was essentially a half a second opportunity to open her legs, scoot her hips, and reclose them. So Trinity's knee was out for quite a while here, and Peyton was just kind of hanging onto the heel, hanging onto the heel to find the opportunity to reset, and then is able to reset quickly at just one split second point. It was a really impressive reset to the position, and then this happens maybe 2 seconds after that, or 2 seconds before the finish.
Yeah, Peyton is so good with that leg reaped over inside position for the heel hook. So you see her in this finals match finish the heel hook from this position, and in her semifinal match, she went for that straight ankle lock. Like, that is a position that she plays from repeatedly, and we've seen that for, I think, the last couple of years in her matches. Like, she's just very, very comfortable in that inside. It's not, what's the term for it?
I don't know. She's reaped all the way through
inside saddle position, essentially.
It's a saddle, but she doesn't have the legs figure forwards.
Right.
Her legs figure forwards. Close to a saddle.
Yeah. We'll one day get the names of all the terms for all the leg locks as we figure them out. There's my phone. So yeah, very fun finals match. Peyton takes the 145 women's match for 145 women's title for finishers, for Midwest finishers. Again, this is a match that I will watch over and over again. I love that Midwest Finishers is putting super high level women together like this in their tournaments. They, submission. I think, if I'm correct, every single women's match ended in a submission in this tournament. I think
so. Everyone that I watched, and I did miss one or two of the first round matches, so there could have been one or two in there, but yeah, a lot of finishes from the women here. It was really exciting jiu-jitsu, and quick finishes too within the first 5 minutes in most cases. Yeah.
They weren't protracted. There'd be some good positional exchanges from either party, and then people working towards a submission very actively. So again, women's 145-pound tournament, a lot of fun. Go back and rewatch that. Zach, any kind of closing thoughts on the women's tournament so far?
Nope.
Yeah, super happy with it. Again, I will watch these ladies fight every time they match up because it's always just exciting jiu-jitsu. So let's move on to the men's 185-pound tournament. We had funny story. We're going to talk about Brad Schneider here. Brad Schneider had a great run here on Midwest Finishers. We had a guy drop into the gym that I train at on Thursday from Omar's gym, from 10th Planet Lombard.
Yep.
Where this event is held, and we were talking, and he realized that I told him about the podcast because we have a giant banner in the gym for the podcast. Got some great rounds, and then he was like, "Oh, do you know about this guy?" And I was like, "It looks familiar." And he showed me a picture of Brad Schneider because we were talking about crucifix and like crucifix chokes and transitions and like my enjoyment of the crucifix.
And we've
game.
seen Brad in Midwest Finishers before, but I think this is his first tournament win for our finishers. First win of the entire tournament. He's gotten wins.
But I could be incorrect. I'm struggling right now because it's a holiday weekend.
Yeah, sure.
My brain is mush.
I know we've watched his matches before.
Yes.
Certainly have watched his matches before.
But he goes, "Oh yeah, watch this guy. He's competing this week on Midwest Finishers. He's a monster. He has a great crucifix game. Look for him to do really well." And I went, noted. And then we're covering and watching the event. I was like, "Oh, that's the guy he was talking about. Okay, let's see." And then match. And then let's talk about his semifinals match versus Shane Fishman. Shane so Brad's in the guard, played a bit from guard in this match. Shane goes to stand up, and Brad holds on to him and basically end up in what is this called? Koala backpacking?
Yeah, standing
guard.
Shane is standing with his feet close together, holding Shane up with his butt off the mat. Shane drops his back down to the mat. This is a classic position. You see this a lot. But what Brad does nicely here is that as he gets his shoulder blades back down towards the mat, so his hips are still hip to hip, he's already reaching for a straight ankle. And so by the time he opens his legs, he's able to collect that straight ankle grip and lock his leg around over the top. And so it's sort of like what we would consider, I mean, this is clearly a strong finish. It's what you would consider a weak entanglement position, but he's got the straight ankle lock grip so tight that it doesn't necessarily matter that the hip control from the entanglement itself is not as strong as maybe it could be. He's still able to firmly finish with it.
Yeah, it's a neat finish. I love this because as Brad falls down, he grabs the grip first. To defend this, Shane essentially has to be able to drop to the mat and start opening his legs, or you can stand up all the way, but because Brad is able to throw his leg over, you're going to get kicked over.
Yep.
And so essentially, you end up in a rock and a hard place as the person defending this, because the person that was sitting up in your guard drops down first, they get the ankle lock grip first, they get the knee in the position first, and they get their other leg off because it gets to fall off of you from the guard into position to push against you. And so you end up basically landing and then immediately having to tap because you can't put pressure on the foot to stand, and you can't escape because you're in the middle of like falling to the mat. And so it makes for a really, really like a super hard to defend submission if you have a guy that's really confident and if the person falling can get a good grip. We see Brad here gets an amazing grip from the start, and this is, again, it's not a sub we see with huge regularity, but it's one of those that if you get, it is such a hard sub to defend. We frequently, when we see guys defend this, we see them get hurt pulling out because they'll land and they'll try to boot out when someone has a really strong grip, and usually we'll see you can kick out of the heel hook here, but you can't kick out of the straight ankle lock because there's such a good grip behind the heel.
Which goes back to what we were talking about a little bit before, is that straight ankle grip is a very controlling position to be in. And if you get a good bite on it, not only can you finish like Brad does here, but it's firm enough control that the other person can't get out.
Yeah, I think Brad even kind of doubles up his control here because he grabs over and then he yanks the leg that was previously around on the opposite side leg over in order to push Shane away and to get better leverage with his own hips into the ankle lock grip. Like, this is a neat straight ankle because essentially you're using the pressure of the mat and you coming back to finish it. You don't necessarily need to have both knees like pinched in super tight on it. So really neat finish here from Brad over Shane Fishman. And so Brad Schneider moves into the finals. Do you want to talk about talk about the finals match for men's finishers?
This whole match was really interesting, actually.
Yeah.
Interesting start. Sanchez pulls guard, and then
Sanchez is coming off of a couple of longer matches, and his previous match was an overtime victory that he he was on the bottom for most of the match. Like
Yeah.
he really had a tough regulation in his
Yeah.
previous match. He got rode for 2 minutes going into the overtime, and then he was able to get, we know he is so good on the back. Sanchez's earlier overtime match was actually really interesting because the commentary did a great job of explaining exactly how the body triangle hook switch happened, and I really appreciated
it was good commentary for that match.
Technical information that the commentary was providing about like how you're seeing him change his feet here. He wants to get his feet to the inside. Okay, he's got his foot. And like the strengths and weaknesses of all of those transitions.
Yeah.
Like usually, I'm not a huge fan of overtime. I don't find it generally that interesting anymore to watch because we've watched so much of it over the years. But when you have good commentary, Midwest Finishers had phenomenal commentary.
They really did.
It actually made it interesting because I was having someone just like walk me through, okay, here's what he wants to do, here's how he's doing it. And the guys weren't stalling, they were both actively working in the position. So it made for a kind of a rare, really interesting overtime supplemented by great commentary. But so Sanchez has had a couple of longer matches going into this. Brad's been looking good. Brad's also on the bigger side of the guys that are 185, whereas Sanchez is historically a 170er. And so I was curious going to the finals match because the commentary kept bringing that up.
Yeah.
Like, how much of a factor was that going to be in this finals match between Brad and Alan Sanchez?
And I think it was certainly a factor watching the whole match. There were some instances where, I think early on, Alan pulls guard, Brad knee cuts, and it was interesting that it seemed like Alan was sort of baiting the knee cut and then had this body lock and then scooted out the back door and was able to get into sort of a spadal kind of position and almost hit this calf crusher, which was really interesting.
I was impressed. I was
very
like,
clean
is he
jiu-jitsu.
Gonna finish this calf crusher, and then you saw Brad go,
no,
and kind of like he didn't grimace, but he definitely made a face that was like, I'm not having a good time. I don't want to do this right now, and like pummels his feet back in and pushes away, and it is cool to see.
Yeah, I bring that up mostly because I think weight was a factor in Alan's inability to finish that calf crusher.
Yeah, there was something else going on there because usually, and we've seen Sanchez hit those before, and we've seen those hit before, especially in the lower weights, where we saw Alan Sanchez get his foot onto his own foot and basically start to be able to push away at the knee, and usually that's the knee exploder.
That's when it's
you
done.
Push away and the knee just goes pop and just explodes, and there's a scream tap, or someone goes and grimaces for a second and then does that really rapid tap on the leg. We saw Brad go and then just sort of decide to escape.
He
just sort of goes, this isn't great. So, I'm gonna move now.
Brad was very technical in the escape as well, but I think that had weight been on parity, Brad might have had to tap to that one. So I think maybe there was a bit of a factor in there. But then
it was neat. One thing I did love is you saw when Sanchez went to push away, he was unable to kind of lift Brad's hips back up. So a lot of times when someone can finish this, when there is more size parity, they will push at the leg, and then they will basically push the opponent's hips up, which make basically a curve in the back and make it really hard to get a sideways angle or to pummel your feet out. It puts you almost in this shoulders to the mat position, and like you're up in the air trying to defend at a leg. You saw Alan push here, and you saw Brad kind of go, I'm going to just adjust and like turn. It's a little teeny adjustment. Like if you're ever curious, you should go back and watch the previous match with Sanchez, with this beginning of this match, because it has that transition sequence in it, and it's something we don't see people escape from with a huge degree of regularity.
No,
it's not
pretty tight.
It's not a common submission that we see folks escape from, especially because Alan actually set it up really, really well. So it's cool both on Alan's side for his setup, because the setup was neat, and from Brad's side going, okay, making this really small angle to be able to unlace his legs here and not get calf slicered. And you're a huge calf slicer guy, so
it's my favorite bad submission.
Yeah. It is a good bad submission. So that was earlier in the match, and so we're again
so we had, this
2 minutes in or something.
Yeah, shortly after all that happens, Alan ends up in guard, and then we starts the finishing sequence for Brad.
The commentary was great here. So the commentary, and we've had a lot of bad commentary over the years. This was absolutely not one. I love when commentary knows the athletes well and can talk about the particularities of their game and like what they do. And so the commentary was talking about, and we see commentaries, I'll say it, over years, we'll see some commentary get not friendly with the athletes, but you'll see some guy do something that's bad technique, and the commentary will talk around, well, maybe he wants this for this reason. The commentary is, so Brad's in Alan Sanchez's guard, and you see Brad, what it looks to be kind of baiting a triangle. And the commentary is like, oh, I'm not sure if Alan knows this, but Brad likes to bait that triangle to escape out for the crucifix.
Yeah.
And that's commentary. When you hear it, you go, I'm very curious. That may work in the gym. That may be something you see, but versus in a finals match with a guy like Alan Sanchez, we've seen that go bad for a lot of people a lot of times. Where it's
generally when someone's game is to bait a submission, it's a lower percentage in finals matches than it would be outside of
or local tournaments. But something like Midwest finishers, you're always curious how that's going to play out. But the commentary said it, and then I'm watching, and I'm going, oh, yeah, he's kind of far away. He's going for the triangle. He's moving through, and then it happens.
And, Alan goes for the plata, but I think it's to a similar effect.
Yeah, the control that he wants is basically looks like Brad Schneider apparently wants that control and wants the head in or out and the arm trapped by Alan Sanchez. Because Alan goes, and then Brad immediately, and this is a drilled response. You can see this is a piece of his game that he didn't come up with on the spot, that he immediately moves into, okay, cool, you took the bait, you're going for the thing I want to go for. Immediately sits back
away onto his butt, and then climbs a leg over almost to like a reverse back mount kind of situation, and then moves into a crucifix.
And again, I've been watching a ton of crucifix. We talked about it for probably the past year on the show. It's a thing that I'm really enjoying, and we've watched a lot of Barrett Yoshida, and I've watched a ton of Barrett Yoshida, and this is not a common crucifix entry you see. He sort of eventually. Brad Schneider gets to the crucifix from almost like a turtle position, which is more common, but the initial setup that he had is not a common entry that we see. And so I loved that the commentary knew his game well enough to be able to talk through that entire sequence and basically go, yep, he's going to set up the crucifix this way, this is how he's going to play, and then you got to watch Brad Schneider go, yep, this is what I'm going to do, and walk through the crucifix.
And there were a lot of steps from defending that the baited plata to getting actually securing and into the crucifix. There's a lot of climbing and a lot of motion. That essentially that bait ended up setting up a turtle, which then he had positioned himself already.
And there's so many little and again, the camera work is great here. You can see both sides. You can see the exact foot motion that Brad Schneider does, and the way that he lifts at Alan Sanchez's hip as he sits behind him to put his hip up so that Alan Sanchez can't get his back taken but has to come up. And it's just it's beautiful to watch commentary talk about something and then watch a drilled sequence from a guy like, oh, this is his A game. This is the thing he does. He is so far ahead of the person that's basically, oh, I'm in this niche position that you are really good at. And we talk about this as coaches a lot.
All the time.
Hey, it's great to have a really, really well-rounded game and have like the standard things, like have a good armbar off your back, have like a good, guard pass. But it is also really good sometimes to have a really niche thing that you are particularly good and sharp at, because a lot of times it falls outside of the general realm of like standard defendable techniques that people are familiar with, and so you can catch people off. And like we see a lot of times with like all the lapel guards that Keno was playing, like a lot of times guys just hadn't seen it before, didn't have an answer, and they were done. And
I think the best example, I mean, we've talked about this exact thing before, but I think the best example of this was like 2017 heel hooks, which is circling back to a conversation we had earlier today, but 2017 heel hooks were still in weird circles frowned upon. In a lot of places it was good, but there were enough high-level guys that did not practice them on a regular basis because they were frowned upon in these high-level gyms because of old traditions. And then you had guys that just didn't give a shit get good anyways. Gordon and Craig. Right? And so these guys showed up. And
Lachlan in 2019.
Still, even in 2019
3 subs in the absolute via heel. Again, Lachlan's kind of a different story there, but it's...
He had an innovation on the entanglements that put him in the same realm,
that guys just didn't know exactly how to deal with in real time. And so we talk about like, it's great, you need to be able to pass the guard, you need to be able to have a double underpass, like there's some things that you need to have, but there's also huge merit into having that thing.
But the caveat is that if you don't have a well-rounded game, you're not going to have enough opportunities to get to that weird thing. So you need to have a well-rounded game, but then also be exceptional at a couple little things that are going to catch people off guard. In this case, a crucifix and this position is the kind of thing that's going to catch people off guard. A lot of people don't spend a lot of time in crucifixes, and it's one of those weird spots that a lot of times if you're not like in a crucifix on a regular basis with people that are good at it, you might think that you're okay there. Like, it doesn't feel like you're in that much danger when someone has you in a crucifix. Like, it's unusual, and you're maybe like, I'm a little trapped
We're
here.
talking about a back crucifix.
Yeah, back crucifix.
Like, top crucifix, you kind of know you're in danger. Like,
well,
usually bad day for you.
Yeah, that's
but
bad.
for back crucifix, a lot of times because the person you have your arm trapped by the leg. And then the other arm for the person is usually fighting down your free arm. And so you end up with a 1-on-0, but you can kind of get your neck. And if you have people that aren't really good at the crucifix, eventually a lot of times you can just kind of wiggle around and free yourself, or it leads to a scramble. But it's uncommon to have guys, like in our gym right now, we have a lot of guys playing crucifix, but to have, I mean, there's ebbs and flows where it's like, I don't see that for a year or 6 months, guys regularly going to crucifix. And then now with Yoshida and guys like Brad Schneider, we're seeing an increase of guys going back to the crucifix. The interesting thing about this, I did cut your point off accidentally, but crucifix is non-scoring.
Yeah.
So it is really interesting that we're seeing kind of an increase of guys playing to the crucifix, because you have to wonder, it's like, if you're electing to go to crucifix as your preferred back position, like guys like Barrett Yoshida did, you're not going to score from that.
Yeah,
so your finishes, you probably have to be more confident and put more stock into your finishes, because you're not going to be able to score your back points from that. And again, in a rule set like Midwest Finishers, it is not as important.
That's what I was going. I think, and we're seeing it happen more in the rule sets where it doesn't matter who's number one. We've seen a couple people moving to crucifix. Doesn't matter there. You know, I think
the control
Barrett Yoshida is the
matters.
Weird one, because his dominance was, you know, ADCC stuff, right? And so that was a weird place for it. But, you know, I don't think we saw it that much in ADCC this year. Maybe the trend is that the meta is going that direction. We see it because it's a nice control position. But, you know, I think we're seeing it a lot more in sub only or rule sets like EBI, where
the control matters, but it's like you're never going to score points, so it doesn't matter. It is a controlling position, regardless of it being, you know, it's back with hooks or back with body triangle or back with rear mount foot post.
Yeah, sure.
Post rear mount is what it's called. Jeez, I couldn't come up with the name of that. We're seeing, you know, those are now scoring positions in things like ADCC, but back crucifix still is not a scored position. So if you are in a rule set where you need to control, it makes a lot of sense. But also, if you're in a rule set where you just need to submit the guy, it also makes sense. But you are giving up your ability to score from the back. And because of how people typically escape out of the crucifix, you're very rarely ending up in another dominant position. And you're very rarely ending up on the back from that position, too. Like,
agreed.
You know, we've seen some people get okay at being able to get the back and trap the arm with it, but it's not smooth. It's not smooth.
They're good at scrambles off of the crucifix. They're not good at necessarily good at taking the back off of it. They're just adept at scrambling from the position. It seems, at least. You know,
well, I mean,
who knows?
I can't point to a guy. I mean, Barry Sheeta doesn't count because he's Barry Sheeta, but I can't point to another guy that I've seen repeatedly get to the crucifix and then end up on the back with the arm trapped from the crucifix.
It's like not a fluid.
It's not a fluid transition.
Positions that fluidly move between one another, just in terms of body dynamics. Yeah.
So this finish, we have Brad Schneider get the crucifix. Alan Sanchez does a good job of like going hand over hand, linking his hands together, which a lot of times will allow you, and Alan does a great job here, of trying to walk his shoulders down off of Brad's body, because with the crucifix, the lower that you can get your head, the harder it is to control the arm. The more you can dip the arm in the shoulder, the more you can move your shoulders away to give yourself more leverage against their leg trapping your arm. But Brad, you're with a guy who has a niche position that he is very, very good at, and Brad kind of weathers it and waits. He holds, he snakes his arm across the neck, and then just ends up basically pushing down Alan's free hand while having the arm trapped with his legs, and then leans over, gets to the shoulder with the choke, and gets a really, really nice one-arm rear naked choke here to take the 185-pound title for Midwest Finishers.
Looked real nice.
Yeah, it was awesome. Again, I love seeing guys that we're moving back into more people looking for the finish. I think we had kind of a lull there last year, and then now I think we're seeing much more. Again, all the women's matches ended in subs. The matches we talked about for the men's here ended in subs in the finals and in the semifinals. I like the trend and the direction that we're going here, and I'm hoping, as we move into Polaris, that trend continues, because there are some fantastic matchups. Zach, anything else you want to talk about Midwest
No, finishers look good. A lot of nice finishes, a lot of exciting matches.
Yeah, very, very happy. Again,
And honestly, if you're looking for a quick tournament to watch, it was many of these matches went pretty quickly.
Yeah,
within the first 5 minutes.
the last
the finishes
hour
are-
of the event is great.
Yeah.
Like I watched, we took this, basically we covered the last hour of matches for the
Yeah.
event. They were great. That is a phenomenal like chunk to watch this weekend. If you want
Yep.
some matches to watch, go back and watch them. Some great stuff to take away, but also some exciting grapplers that we're going to see. I'm guessing we're going to see more of Brad Schneider here.
Yeah.
With a win like
He
this.
looked good.
I can't wait to see more of his crucifix game and to learn more from it. So let's move on to our preview of Polaris 24. This one's going to be a banger, Zach.
Yeah,
Where do you
absolutely.
want to start with this? Want to start with title fights?
Yeah, let's start with the title fights.
Okay.
Start at the top.
So you want to start with Jedi Hugh versus Matthias Szynski or Ethan Carlson versus Nathan Orchard?
Let's go Ethan and Orchard.
Okay, Ethan and Orchard. So in the pre-show we talked about this a little bit.
Yep.
These folks have met before.
Yep. Twice, we think.
Twice. Yeah. So combat jiu-jitsu. So slightly different grappling
Yeah.
rules where you can
Slapping's
punch, you can
allowed.
slap.
So it's an odd rule set. We typically don't cover combat jiu-jitsu on this show as part of things unless there's really nothing else going on that weekend.
Yeah, it's just kind of
It's
outside.
slightly different.
It's just outside of the realm of.
It's
the
jiu-jitsu
sports
pretending
we-
to be MMA.
It's pretending to be amateur MMA, kind of. But we have our thoughts on it. Some folks love it. If you want to hear us talk about it, shoot us a DM and give us a
Sure.
reason. And we'll consider it. We cover it from time to time if there are great names on it, but it's just less of our forte because it is outside of the realm
Yeah.
of most sport grappling that we cover.
Yep.
Aside from that, these two have met twice in combat jiu-jitsu. Once to a
Once
draw.
was a draw in December of 2022, and once was Ethan taking the win by rear naked in June of 2022. So they're so Ethan is 1-0-1 against Nathan Orchard.
From what we see for the last couple of years.
For the last couple of years.
For some reason, I think these guys met like 2016 or 20, like
it's
way
possible.
back in the day, because both these guys were on those like the super fight cards that were of that era. Like
Yeah.
both these guys were
Pretty
guys-
regular on those,
Yeah, they
yeah.
were on those, and they were around the same size. I think Ethan would have been on the smaller side of that, but I think Nathan was also at 45 at a time as well, and 45 and
I don't remember
55.
him
So
at 45,
I
but-
think they've met many years prior to that as well. But I don't. We couldn't find it, and I couldn't remember it. So keep that in mind. Ethan has looked phenomenal recently. He's had some
Yeah.
tough losses. Let me pull up, we had his record pulled up here. He's had some tough
he's had
losses.
his loss to Pato and Cisneros were at Raw most recently against Pato, Cisneros at ADCC. Those were tough losses, but against guys that are
Top of the heap.
Top of
best,
the heap,
Best
right.
in the world.
Best
some
in the
some
world.
of the best in the world.
another loss to Cade, right? These are who's number one before that. Like these are
but
are
he also
losses
has a
to guys
win over Fabrizio Andre.
who's a little bit smaller than him if I remember correctly, but still it was a solid win at who's
And
number one,
and a submission win over Fabrizio Andre.
Yes.
Like that's
which is big.
that speaks really well to the level that he's on. He has a win over Andy Tackett, which is the smaller Tackett
Yeah.
a couple of years ago. Look at him at West at
His 20 and 2021, Ethan looked incredible. I think he really had a build-up focus for ADCC. Had an unfortunate loss to Cisneros at first round at ADCC.
Yeah.
And we haven't seen a ton of him since then. I was down there.
You were down at B Team a couple
I was
weeks
at
ago.
B Team about a month ago. He's looking smaller, like in a good way. Ethan's looking smaller than he did at ADCC.
Because Ethan looked like he was about 170.
Right. And so,
At
we
ADCC.
had conversations externally. It's unclear. We never know. But how much did the weight cut affect him? Because he was looking real big for 155 at that time.
145.
Or 145,
he was
yeah.
66. And he looked, Ethan at about 3 months went from looking like Ethan Crownston looked most of his career like in shape to looking gigantic like a bodybuilder. And then at ADCC, he maintained that size. And we were curious, okay,
How did he do
how,
that?
and apparently it was a tough cut. And he talked about it on the Simple Man podcast, like just how hard of a cut that was to
Right.
get him down to that weight class. And so internally we talked a lot about like how much and did that diminish his performance. He had a great match with Josh Cisneros. Go back and watch that. It was wildly entertaining.
And that's the
but he
kind of
does
match
lose
where,
it.
but the reason that we brought that up is that match with Cisneros was wildly entertaining, very fast paced, very good match, very athletic match.
Versus
that is
this-
also the kind of match that if you had a very difficult weight cut, you start to feel it at minute 6, minute 7, minute 8, and like it might be.
And a guy like Cisneros is not going to give a shit.
hell no.
Because Cisneros he's cutting weight,
But not that
but
much.
he's not cutting like Ethan was cutting to get down there. And I think For some reason, I think Cisneros is also a few years younger, which again, as you're
Cisneros is
younger,
young, yeah.
that weight cut is a little easier to make, and as you get older,
Certainly
you get
is.
Zach and I's age, that weight cut gets a little harder to make.
Yeah. So, but I mean, the overall point is that Ethan is, as always, an extremely talented grappler, and it looks like maybe he's not going to have as hard of a time getting down to weight as he did for ADCC this time around, because this is 155, and I think he's looking a little bit less bulky than he was going into ADCC.
Yeah, again, it's 55, not 45.
Yep.
But I don't think he's going to need to cut a giant amount of weight for this matchup. But it's a 55-pound title. Orchard has been a little more active in the last than he has been
months
previously.
Yep.
He has a kind of controversial win over Keith McCoy at the same event. There was a weird reset, and there was some weirdness in that match that resulted in that, and there was some weirdness in the match. So I personally don't want to put a ton of stock in that, but he does have a win over Kieran Davarin at Polaris Squads. He has a net crank win. He has a draw versus Darren O'Connell. He has a loss to Roberto Jimenez at Combat Jiu-Jitsu Worlds, but again, it's Roberto Jimenez, and if that dude does anything, it's submit people quick.
Loss to PJ. So, but these are his losses over the past 2 years have been to people that are extremely good and at the top levels.
He has a
win over Hunter Colvin, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so
Hunter Colvin's also on the card. That was also back in 2019.
Yeah.
And that was Combat Jiu-Jitsu Worlds, 4 years ago at this point, which is right.
Time flies.
That was pre-pandemic.
Oof.
Think about how long that was
that
ago.
Hurts me in that age.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So how do you
Nathan
think
Orchard. So I think that this play, right? I think the good money or the honest bet is for Ethan.
Yeah.
Ethan's been competing at very high levels for a very long time. Has wins over some of these high level guys. Nathan, by the stats, by the books, has mostly losses against the very, very high level guys. Maybe except Keith. He has a win over, but that was a controversial win.
Yeah.
Stylistically, I think I still give this to Ethan.
Yeah, I do too. I think that the wrestling and just... I think the wrestling and his back-taking ability will be the big thing here. Now, we know that Orchard has a super dangerous guard. It wouldn't surprise me to have Orchard, wrestle a little bit, but then play from his back and, shoot the triangles. We know he literally has the dead Orchard. That is his... It is a submission that's named after him. That no-arm armbar, that no-arm triangle armbar that he does is named after him, and he is the best in the world at it to this day still.
Yeah. But the thing is with Nathan's guard is that you have to kind of play close into him for it to really play out the way that he wants it to. Often, like we see when people play in his guard low, then they get in a lot of trouble because Nathan's very good there. Ethan doesn't play in people's guard that way. Ethan stands, he floats. He's not a chest-to-chest guy.
Yeah.
He can be, but it's only after he's set things up from a little further away. So I don't think that Ethan plays into Nathan's guard in the way that Nathan needs him to pull off the upset here. And so I think I have to give this to Ethan.
I give it to Ethan too. Again, we've seen Orchard upset people before. He has a rear naked choke win over AJ Agazarm.
Yeah.
At Sug, back in 2016 or 17. I think 17.
Yeah.
We know that Orchard is a guy that has amazing flash subs. The Dead Orchard, that is his best thing, and that is a flash sub.
Oh, by no means do I think that Nathan's not in the match. I think Nathan Orchard is always in a match. He can always pull something off, and he's got these submissions that come on quick.
Yeah. But if you do it by the numbers...
And we've seen Ethan lose in cases like that before, where something comes on quick and is unexpected. We've seen some of his earlier matches, 2018, 2019, some of those losses were in cases where you thought Ethan was winning, and then he almost instantly wasn't. I think his match against Cade went that way.
That's what I'm trying to find right now. It says it's a referee's decision. I think it was the second match.
The first match against Cade, which was not at Who's Number One. It was in...
Was it? No, the first one was. The first one was because it was a rematch of Who's Number One, because it was a controversial win for Cade the first time, and then Cade matches him again, and he Darce chokes him.
Did he have a loss against Ty that I'm thinking of then? Because there was a not as big of a...
I can't scroll through his record.
It was a third coast.
So it was a Ty Rotolo, ADCC Trials. His Atoho win in 2018 over Ty when Ty was a child. And then... I'm
not going to remember what I'm thinking of, but...
Yeah, he's gone against both Rotolos. He has 2 losses to Cade, the first of which being really controversial, and the second of which he got Darced in. Yeah. So, again, I give it to Ethan.
Yeah.
It should be a fun match. I think Polaris is doing a great job with this matchmaking. They've, I forget who the 55 champion was prior, but both these guys are going to come to bring it.
Yep.
I do think that Ethan's passing style and his ability to track the back will
It's an advantage.
Be an advantage here. I am curious with all the work that Nathan Orchard has done in the EBI rule sets over the years, how
Fair.
Nathan, it's so hard to do. Nathan made his name in the early EBIs, so a lot of that technique is just ingrained into him.
And if it goes into overtime, that's a huge factor.
No overtime Polaris.
Oh, no overtime Polaris, right?
Yeah.
It's Polaris.
Polaris.
Right.
So if he goes to decision, but I just think the activity that Ethan will be able to put up here will win him. It would not surprise me to see a sub like a rear naked choke from the back. But again, Orchard is phenomenal in the back. It just is really a measuring stick of, where is Nathan Orchard right now?
It'll be an exciting match.
It will be an exciting match. So next match we're going to talk about is Jed Hugh versus Mateusz Szynski, as Miranda says, Polish Mateusz. This is fun.
This is the welterweight title fight for Polaris here.
Yeah, it is. Welterweight, so 170. Mateusz Szynski, where are we at? Jed Hugh has a recent loss to Roberto Jimenez right at the end of their match at Polaris 22 via head and arm choke. He has a win over Alan Taza. He has a win over Alan Sanchez, win over Paul Craig, submission win over AJ at Polaris.
Those are big wins, right? And a win over Cody Steele. Like, he's been on a
back in
roll
21
in Polaris specifically, so he plays well in this set.
Absolutely.
A loss to Yuri, but can you blame him?
It's also Yuri, and that was Raw Grappling. That was the event in Italy, I think.
Yeah.
Was Raw Grappling, but Yuri's also a giant man now, the current absolute champion for ADCC. About a year, actually less than a year.
Less than a year before that.
Like 9 months after
That's why I said, can you blame him? Like, he's much smaller than Yuri, and so he's had some good runs lately. He's not a guy that we've seen as much on the professional scene as we'd like, but this is one of those things that happens because he's British or English. I always get
the flag. The flag is British.
Yeah, I always get confused because there's so many tiny little countries within the United Kingdom. So his flag is the United Kingdom. So point is he's on the European scene. He's on the European scene, and those are the guys that we have a hard time seeing as much because a lot of the major events are in the U.S. It's hard for them to get over here. It costs them money to get over here a lot of times. The payouts for some of these matches aren't going to be as good. So
aren't going to justify the cost to come over in the first place.
Right. It doesn't justify the cost, and so we don't see them as much as we would like. But when we have seen him recently, he's had some really good matches against good names.
So Mateusz Szynski, I pulled up some of his results on Tapology. I know this is missing a ton of matches.
Yeah, it certainly is.
But his biggest win on Tapology is his straight ankle win over William Tackett very quickly at ADCC at the World Championships. He then goes on to lose to Dante Leon via decision, and we know how good Dante Leon is. We just saw him last week get a rear naked choke win on who's number one, versus Ruan Alvarenga. We know how good Dante is, and if you can take Dante to a decision, that speaks to how good you are in that match. He also has a loss at the last 2 Polaris ago to Oliver Taza, again another decision. He actually fought Dante twice on GrappleFest as well. So this is, I'm going to struggle to pick this one. I like what I've been seeing recently online from Mateusz with his leg locks.
Yeah.
Like, he's a B team, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they call him the Polish guy with the ankle locks. Is I think what they referred to him as for a while. And he has again, we were talking about in the previous segment, his ankle lock game is really, really good, and it is uniquely good. We saw him do that in ADCC European trials when he lost to Taza at the European trials, and that was a very, very... He made basically one mistake to lose points there by pulling guard, but
and was in a leg lock battle with Taza, which not many people can say that they come out of an intentional leg lock fight with Taza and come out even with a draw or not getting subbed, right? Like, if you're looking to have a shootout with the legs against anyone,
Oliver Taza ain't the guy you're going to pick.
He's one of the last you're going to pick. So that tells you how good Mateusz leg entanglement work is, because he's able to hang with Taza there and lose on points and not the sub. So,
but again,
we've seen more of Jed lately, and Jed has beaten Taza recently
on points. So it makes you kind of This is one I've kind of gone back and forth on, because I like Jed Hughes. Impressed me a lot recently.
Yeah,
I like guys that have like a shotgun, like sub, where it's like, man,
especially in the Polaris rule set.
Yeah, he's good. He's gonna get there. I just think that if you can beat Taza, and we've seen that match with Taza, you can beat a guy like Sanchez. Like he leg locked Paul Craig quickly, I think, but a lot
of his big wins are decisions.
Yes.
Right, and so. that if you're in a shootout kind of situation in a Polaris where you have to,
I've gone back and forth in this pick both times.
I can't figure it out.
I can't pick either of them. This
would be an exciting match.
This is gonna be a fun match. I look for the legs.
Yeah,
I think this would be a leg lock battle through and through with both guys. I'm curious. Jed Hugh, we know, has phenomenal game planning.
Yeah,
if Jed Hugh would be able to take points here and win that way.
Yeah,
so. Should be fun. That's the welterweight title fight. I love when he can't pick. I'm like, well, they both bring things to the table. It's definitely a cop-out, but it's definitely fun. Next one that I'm super excited for, Keith Krikorian versus Thomas Halpin.
Yeah, and these two, so as far as we can tell, these two have not seen each other. They've been around for a while, and it's possible that they met in something that we didn't cover, or a long time ago when we didn't cover it, something that's not on either of their listed records on BJJ Heroes, because they miss sometimes, but as far as we know, they have not seen each other before.
Until someone DMs us and goes, this match, and I'm like, that was 6 months ago. Right. Thank you.
Obviously, yeah.
Yeah, as always happens, and I always appreciate it when it's, hey, man, they actually met here. It was recent, and you just missed it. Like, oh, you covered that. Here's a clip. I love it.
Here's you talking about
it. I love it. It's happened before. Someone sent me a clip. Here's you talking about the match. And I was like, well, that's crazy. Cool. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
I hate picking against Keith.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to do it. Keith has just been impressed me over and over and over again since we've been covering him since like 2017 or 2018.
Yeah, and Keith can pull out wins out of nowhere often. He always looks good. In no match, I can't think of many matches that Keith has had where he doesn't look like he's in it.
The Buchecha match is that the only one I can point to.
Fair.
But it's also Buchecha in ADCC in the Absolute in 2019. Like, and again, as a point, if that's where I have to go to have a match where you don't look amazing, and again, you're a 145er, that speaks to how good you are. And Keith, and we interviewed Keith. Go listen to the West Coast Trials interview after he won West Coast Trials. Keith is a 3-time ADCC Trials silver medalist.
Yep.
He is a 1-time gold medalist. He went to ADCC in 2019. He won Trials to go to ADCC in 2022. He has consistently improved over and over and over again. He had some tough matches on Polaris squads to Michael Galvao. He had a tough match with Ash Williams. It was on Grapple Fest 12 that was go back and watch that match.
Ashley looked really good in that match. They both looked great in that match, but Ashley looked really good in that match.
That was the best I think we've ever seen Ashley.
Yeah.
Like, that was a phenomenal match. Keith has a win at West Coast Trials over Josh Cisneros, a win over Damian Anderson, a heel hook win over Robert Deagle. He has a win over Gabriel Souza at Who's Number 1.
Yep.
He recently lost to Kenta Iwamoto, but that was also at welterweight.
Yep.
And like
he was giving up some pounds for that.
Not been a welterweight. So Keith looks bigger, and he has a win over Sam McNally on... very recently. Yeah, on Grapple Fest in 2023 and this year. Thomas Halpin has a win over Dino Bicolau. Again, a loss versus Ash Williams at Polaris Squads. He has a win over, Emilio Hernandez. Yeah. Lost to Ethan Krellinston. Lost to Ty Rotolo at Grapple Fest 7. Lost to Alex Sodre. Lost to Ash Williams.
Yeah, so this is another case where... Keith has wins over Keith has wins over guys that we see win regularly that are at the top of the top. He has losses to some of those guys too. In this case, Thomas Halpin, he's always hanging in those matches against those top guys, but he's mostly got losses to them. And, that's not to say that he's not in this match. It's just hard to pick. Statistically, it's hard to pick the guy
by the numbers.
By the numbers, we have to pick Keith here.
Yeah.
He's got incredible wins over very, very high-ranking guys, guys that we know can punch up and win any tournament at any moment.
Yeah.
He's got wins over those guys, whereas Halpin largely has lost to guys in that same bracket, right?
What I'm curious about is I think this would be another heel hook fight. We see Halpin, especially in his European trials run, go for a lot of leg locks, and we saw that with with Keith versus Ash Williams. They both have not recent. Halpin's 2 years ago, but they both have matches with Ash Williams, and we saw
Keith play that against Ashley Williams. It didn't go well for him in that particular case. But, I also think Keith is the kind of guy that can recognize when someone else is playing that game and just not play it. And I could very much see this going the opposite direction because Keith plays a smart game. And I could very much see Keith recognizing
We've just
that
seen him
if he's going to lose.
So much.
Yeah. I think Keith could potentially go into this saying, if I'm going to lose to Halpin, it's going to be in the entanglements. So I will avoid those or selectively enter when I think it's to my best advantage. edge, and so we've seen Keith play the smarter version of jiu-jitsu there, where despite him being really good at something, he can recognize when someone else might take him on it. And
even in the West Coast Trials interview I did, he talked about specifically changing his mentality and his training and his process going into this trials to go, look, I am not going to be able to sub all of these guys all the time. I have to have an approach that will both get me points, get me a victory here, regardless of just being able to sub, because guys at the top are so good, I might not be able to sub them. I need to put myself in a position to take the sub when it is there, but I need to not be so solely focused on it, because that is my key to victory. And it was really neat to hear him identify that, make a change, and then see him go, and with that change being made, go and do that. And so I've been super high on Keith.
Forever.
And I listened to Thomas Halpin's podcast too, so like I like Halpin, I like his game, but I'm gonna go Keith. I just think that he is going to be able to make the tactical adjustments here, and I think he's going to excel in the wrestling, and he's going to be able to trouble Thomas in the wrestling here and be able to sort of more readily dictate where the match is happening on his terms. But I do see this being a leg lock game.
I have every expectation that Halpin is in this deeply in the match, and that it's a tough match for both guys. I have to, by the numbers, pick Keith on this one, but it's going to be an exciting one to watch.
So the next match we're going to cover is Hunter Colvin versus Owen O'Flanagan. You might remember Owen O'Flanagan for surprising everyone.
Multiple times.
Heel hook win over Mason Fowler. He does have a loss to Bodoni at the World Championships via a steam
but that
lock.
match was bonkers.
Go back and watch the Wagner-Hosha versus Owen O'Flanagan match, where one of my favorite interviews ever is Wagner backstage after Owen breaks his foot, and Wagner's, I think I'm going to butcher the interview. Go back and find this interview.
Wagner wins this match, but Owen broke his foot.
And so Owen gets his foot and like breaks it, and then Wagner doesn't tap, and then Owen looks at him and he goes, break? And Wagner goes, yeah. And he goes, you're really about the cause. and it's Wagner telling the story, and Wagner goes, yeah. And then proceeds to win the match, and it's just like,
There was an interview with O'Flanagan about this same situation too, where O'Flanagan said something along, and I'm very much paraphrasing, but said something along the lines of like, I broke it, he acknowledged that I broke it, and then he just kept going, and I was like, well, shit, I don't have that in me. I don't. He was something along the lines of like, I'm not gonna just let him break my shit, and he's clearly okay with me just breaking his shit. Like, there's a difference here.
I remember that interview too, because
I don't remember exactly what he said. Like, but
it was basically
something along those lines.
Was like, I'm not, like, I don't have that.
Right.
Like,
I'm not gonna let him break my ankle, and he just let me break his ankle and kept going. Like, and there was a really funny interview. But so he breaks Wagner's ankle, but loses that match. He loses to Bodoni in like a fucking shootout where he almost got Bodoni. Once or twice, and he looked like. I honestly thought O'Flanagan. I'm a little close.
You got excited. Zach gets excited. I'm looking at the audio just peak. I'm like, Zach's getting loud at the end of the show. He gets excited.
That's what happens. I honestly thought there were times in that match that Flanagan was going to win.
Yes.
And then Bodoni sort of pulled through.
He did. So Hunter Colvin, again, I've been watching Hunter since 2016 or 2017 or 18, I think. He has a loss recently to Roberto Jimenez by triangle, but again, it's Roberto Jimenez. He has a win over Owen Lively on Polaris on the same event. Rear naked choke late in the match. Some draws against Igor Tanabe, who we know is really good. You go back and watch his unrivaled match with William Tackett, where he looked phenomenal. Or Couch or Tackett. I always forget if it's Couch or Tackett.
Couch. He lost, but he looked really good in that match.
Yeah. He has a loss in the North American trials to Jacob Rodriguez via buggy choke in a match that he was almost winning. Had Jacob Rodriguez not gotten the buggy choke, Hunter Colvin would have gone and won West Coast trials. That speaks to, again, you're not winning West Coast trials if you're not really, really good. That was one of the most stacked trials. Couch has been active, kind of popping back and forth between Colvin popping back and forth between MMA. But he's looked good. But Owen has just looked next level. Again, he
so well.
He heel hooked Mason Fowler.
Yeah,
a guy that we think has some of the best leg locks in the sport.
Yeah, and I think so. Again, this is one that statistically we have to go with O'Flanagan. I think that this is a little bit deeper stylistically than some of the other matches that we've talked about. Hunter is very much a aggressor on the mats.
Yes.
Right? He is pushing forward at all times. His wrestling's good. He's an incredible athlete.
Yeah, he's
And
also strong.
Strong as hell.
Shit.
You know, we've talked to people that have had matches against him. Well, the fact that he was able to heel hook Fowler, who is also someone that is notoriously...
Owen did.
Owen.
Yeah, you
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. But so Hunter is notoriously strong.
Yeah.
O'Flanagan is someone that doesn't necessarily care about those things, right? He is capable of maneuvering people that are better athletes than him. And so for that reason, I have to go with O'Flanagan here again, too, because we've seen so many times him take that guy that wins matches because they're athletic and aggressive and moving forward and know how to play that game. And he's been able to turn it on them.
Mason and Wagner are both that guy. And so I think stylistically it's a really tough match for Coven. Again, Coven repeatedly has impressed me with his ability to transition and run through.
And his matches are interesting.
Yeah, he's a really strong leg lock game.
Yep.
He has a good guard game for such a big, strong guy. He is very flexible. He is amazingly tricky, and he almost in every match will throw something at a guy that will go, oh, you weren't expecting that.
Yeah.
But again, Owen is the same thing too.
Yeah.
But I think, he's a little more maneuverable, and he plays into that. Yeah, I'm not really going to care if you're going to be the stronger guy trying to impose. I'm going to do well with that and have really great counter offense there. So that's why I'm going Owen on this. I potentially think he gets I've always been impressed with Hunter's leg lock defense.
Yeah.
But I do think that Owen is just that next level with the leg locks, and I think that Owen's going to take it probably by heel hook, because again,
I'm not going to predict that far.
Heel hook Fowler. I just think you can do it again. So that is that match. Last match we're going to preview. We have Jason Rao versus Matty Holmes. Couldn't pull up a ton on Matty Holmes. I think we've seen him on GrappleFest.
Yeah.
Win over Kieran Davin on GrappleFest. Win over Brad Schneider, who we just talked about
on
GrappleFest, and win over Max Bickerton on GrappleFest. Loss on Polaris to Lloyd Cooper, but that was Polaris 11.
Yeah,
we are on Polaris 24 right now.
Recently, he's had 3 wins that are recorded that are against guys that we know we've talked about before.
Then you got Jason Rao.
Yeah.
Jason Rao, generally being a monster, generally having one of the, and everyone talks about Rao having like some of the best leg locks, if not the best leg locks in the sport. And even guys that don't train with Rao will be like, oh yeah, he's like the guy.
Yeah.
And Rao has, him and Taza have some of the best knee bars in the world. Go back and watch Jason Rao's run on GrappleFest, Rise.
Oh,
Rise 11.
Yeah.
His run at Rise 11. I can't find it here. It only says his run on Rise 9. But you can just look at Rao's BJ Hero page, and it's sub win, shoulder lock, outside heel hook, inside heel hook, outside heel hook, outside heel hook, outside heel hook, inside heel hook. It's like we know what Jason Rao brings. Whenever Josh Bacalao in 2019 at Trials, inside heel hook. Herbert Burns, inside heel hook. Quentin Rosenwig, straight ankle lock. Like Joe Bays, who is the heel hook guy in 2019, outside heel hook on BJJ Fanatics. Like, you know what Jason Rao brings to the table, and I think that is what he is going to bring to the table here at Polaris. And I think we're going to see him hit a heel hook or a straight ankle lock on Matty Holmes.
Yeah. But Matty Holmes is sort of an unknown factor here too, right? For us.
Unfortunately.
I'm sure a lot of people have seen a lot more of him. We have not seen as much of him because of the events that we cover here. But so he's a little bit of an unknown factor. We could see him come out and really
he
put
could
on
surprise
a show,
us.
right?
Like this could be his breakout performance. But again, for me, watching by the numbers and watching Jason Rao for the past
5 years.
Nah, me.
6 years.
I'm gonna watch. I've been watching Rao since probably 2015 or earlier, like back in the Dizay, because he was a long time ago. We've been watching Rao for a lot of years.
Yeah.
I like Rao's game. I like how he transitions. He is such a hard dude to like win on.
Yeah.
And he has such a strong lock game. With the record we can see from Matty Holmes, again, 3 years ago, his one loss recorded here is a heel hook loss by Lloyd Cooper.
Well, that doesn't mean much at this point, though.
It doesn't mean that you can completely reinvent your game, but I got to go Rao here because honestly, regardless, you could put me against anyone, and if I'm gonna pick Rao, I'm gonna pick him by leg lock because he's just so hard to beat. Go watch his run on Rise to see more about his game, but I'm picking Jason Rao. There are also some other really great matches on this card. Anything else here?
No, I think it's going to be a really exciting event.
Yeah, it should be a great one. We have some other matches on the main card, women's matches, 2 more men's matches. But I am very, very excited for Polaris. This should be a lot of fun. Simon's going to be in here next week covering Polaris, so that should be fun. I think we got Worlds coming up in a couple weeks.
2 weeks.
3
Is
weeks?
it
2 weeks?
2 or 3.
Ooh, it's coming up. So.
I usually do Worlds, but I think if I remember correctly, I am out of the country during Worlds. So
we'll see. We'll push it, Zach.
maybe I'll come back.
We'll push it.
Pop
Hey,
in,
Zach. Hey, Zach, it's Worlds time.
Pop back over from Germany, do a show, head back out.
Or I mean, we just bump the show a little bit. Hey, Zach's coming back. We're gonna do a Wednesday show. But we'll talk about it. So, anything else going on this week for you?
No.
Just prepping for your trips.
Prepping for trips, fighting with cauliflower ear.
Ugh.
Just a brutally persistent bitch this time.
Yeah, I've drained it twice for you.
Yep, I've drained it. I've had it drained 6 times total.
Ugh, that's terrible.
The last one was really my fault because I was like, it's healed, and then just trained on it, and it very much
Narrator,
wasn't healed.
it was not.
Narrator, it was not.
Yeah.
So I'm an idiot. I think many of us that do jiu-jitsu are, and in classic fashion, I've been coming back too early, and
looks pretty good now, though.
It's doing okay now. I probably need to get I've never worn a headgear in my life, but this is also the first time in 30 years of grappling that I've actually had an ear blow up.
Yeah.
And so
I got headgears if you want. You'll lend you some.
Oh yeah, that'd be better because I'll only use it for like 2 weeks or something
you
like
can
that.
use it forever. I use it when my ears blow up, but I don't pull out. I don't get cauliflower from mount, so so I don't get it much anymore.
Great.
Yeah, so that's fun. That sucks, Zach.
Yeah, it sucks. It's been a pain in the ass. What do you got going on, man?
I'm not doing anything. It's the holiday weekend.
Yep.
Enjoying it. I spent yesterday reconfiguring the podcast set. And
looks nice.
And being neurotic and freaking out as I always do whenever I have to take apart the entire podcast set and put it back. So that was that was essentially most of my weekend. I'm doing some other filming for some personal stuff that I'm excited about, and then really just trying to get the podcast set reconfigured and set us up to move into the other half of 2023 with a new quality of show, and just sort of putting my energy into that, looking at ADCC and looking at more ADCC rules this week. Yeah. To kind of refresh myself on that, so I'm ready to go out if I'm not sure if I'm going to Dallas yet, but ready to
in the event
I go to Dallas to be prepped and ready for ADCC. Yep. And I think we're having more. I mean, Enigma in Austin, Texas, use ADCC rules. Like we're seeing more events use it, and I'm pushing hard for our association to make the swap over. I just think that it's the best, so that's kind of my week as well. Is just prepping and getting my materials together.
I would honestly love to see more events that are in the gi taking on ADCC variation rule sets for the gi too. I just think it's a better. It
pushes activity and pushes that.
It's the most interesting rule set we have available to us right now for this.
So I'm happy, and unfortunately we didn't cover Enigma, but we talked about it a little bit. Yep. But I love that we are seeing more pro events using ADCC. It is the pinnacle of the sport. Yeah. I would love to see it be more universally adopted, and so this week will be me setting up on the rules, and then you and I have a commentary gig coming up here in a couple of weeks for Copa Elite. So that should be fun if you want to hear Zach and I do commentary on a pro event. A really, really fun pro event here coming to Virginia.
It's an annual event, and last year's was incredibly well put together.
Felipe Costa won it. It was a $3,000 cash prize. And
then he went on to win PANS this year at Black Belt.
Yeah.
Or second. No, he took second at PANS, I think, this year.
I believe that is correct.
But it was nice to see a guy that we did a sort of a local pro event. Yeah. Or a more regional pro event. And he flew in for that, a regional pro event, I guess we'll call it. And then go on to do really well at the world stage. So
it'll be fun.
More of that,
I'll start that prep as well this week, so we can be prepped and ready to go to do commentary for Copa Elite. But it should be a lot of fun.
Very exciting, yeah.
That's all I got, Zach.
Yep.
All right. As always in the show, I'm your host Maine, so my co-host
Zach,
and we are the Grappling Rewind. We'll see you on the mat where it is. Stay safe. If you like the show, please consider sharing it on Facebook with the folks at your gym. It's the best way that we grow the show, and we really appreciate it. You can reach out to us on email.
We also have Instagram. We have Facebook. We have Twitter. We have Google+.
Until that shuts down.
We have a website.
If you have an event you would like to have us cover, please let us know. If you have a name, like most people do, and you'd like to have us stop butchering it,
let us know.
Reach out to us. The show is also available on YouTube, Spotify, in addition to iTunes and every other podcast service. We very much appreciate your time, and thank you.